Do you have feelings of apprehension or anxiety without knowing why? Do you feel that something bad may happen, but you are not sure what? Do you wake up with a sense of anxiety of what the day will bring? If you answered yes to all three questions, then the anxiety type you are struggling with is unknown fears. Your fears can be as out of control as your imagination will allow. You can show up daily as generally anxious with obsessive worry, or you have anxiety and fear that comes on strong, can energetically take over a room, and appears to come out of nowhere. Or you're seeing and experiencing psychic energies and having nightmares that if you try explaining this to others, they may question your level of sanity. This type of anxiety pattern is often an emotional energy that was stored in the body from being buried due to a traumatic event. And without it ever being released out of the body, it continues to present itself whenever triggered. A person can't work through this if these energies and these memories remain subconscious and the trauma was a highly volatile experience. Then people are too fearful to bring it out to their conscious awareness and face off with it. And thus, the actual emotional energy, the anxiety itself, remains stuck in their body, keeping the person stuck in life in a fearful, anxious, worrisome state. And this anxiety can get even worse for people, often turning into hysteria and sometimes even paranoia if left for too long and trigger too much. The good news is you can subdue this energy and even release it from your body. Go off, reprogram different, better responses, and get on with your life. Welcome back to Soul Science with Gia. I am Gia, creator and host. This is where we get to learn and discuss healing tools, techniques, and methods for your mind, body, and soul. Today's video is one for Plant Medicine Mondays, and we are featuring a plant that works with this type of anxiety in the realm of heightened unknown fears. If you did not watch the anxiety workshop video, then you're not going to really know what type applies to you. There's 16 of them, folks. So if you haven't watched that, I suggest you go back and watch it. Otherwise, you're welcome to watch all 16 different types of anxiety if that works for you. Either way, let's get started. So in today's video, I'm going to explain three things. First, what the signs and symptoms are that show up when you are out of balance emotionally with this type of anxiety. And this shows up in three major areas: your mental, physical, and energetic systems. Second, what to use to transform your anxiety, the reasoning behind why to use it, and the how to use it. And lastly, the positive potential of working with this plant. So let's start with the signs and symptoms that show up when you're out of balance emotionally with this type of anxiety in these three areas. First, with the physical. So when you're looking at the physical, anxiety that is fear-based and has hung around too long will start to show signs and symptoms in your nervous system in terms of your fear response, right? So your fight, flight, or freeze response, as we call it, will start to go haywire. You may be having complaints of muscle tension, knots, and headaches, anything from the neck and the shoulders through the head. You can have a lot of different tension headaches. That's probably because the fascia that's in the muscle gets really, really tight, kind of clamps down on that area and starts to get that head pounding. You'll see cardiac responses such as anxiety, heart rate problems, heart palpitations, night sweats, possibly chest pain, panic attacks, shortness of breath. With the fight or flight fear responses, when the nervous system goes nuts, you're going to possibly have vasovagal, where that means you're like sometimes passing out. Dilated eyes, could have some tremors. You're going to see increased beta brain waves if you were to take a look at that. High heart rate, high blood pressure, IBS, or any sort of stomach pains when you're eating because you're not in a rest and digest state. So the blood moves out to the muscles when you're in fear and flight so that you can get more energy to run or to fight and to respond in a highly stressful environment. So when that happens, if you start shoving food down your face, you can't really digest, the organs can't do what they need to, the intestines have all kinds of problems, and you get pain and IBS and all kinds of inflammatory stuff. Sometimes people, when they sleep, will be teeth grinding or jaw clenching. And even in this area of fear-based anxiety, because you're dealing with past trauma experiences that usually were buried, flashbacks may start to come out, signs of acute stress syndrome or PTSD. If that starts to happen, that's a really clear indication that you have probably buried some things and it's really coming to the surface, and you have been operating in this state for so long that it's starting to all come to a head and needs to be addressed immediately, or it's just going to get worse. Mentally, how this shows up when anxiety has kind of reared its ugly head this way over a period of time and you have not been able to process it and move it out, you're going to probably have problems moving forward in life, isolate and withdraw. You're not going to go after things that you want. You're going to be very limited in your ability to grow or respond appropriately in a healthy manner in any type of relationship. And often relationships are destroyed or fall apart because that fear-based anxiety is very obsessive and ruminating and doesn't allow a person to be present or attend to the other individuals that they're engaging with. You don't really have the ability to listen a lot. You can kind of get foggy brain, almost ADD. This is usually when the trauma starts to kind of rear its ugly head in a subconscious manner where that anxiety just starts taking over on a day-to-day. Often, any sort of opportunities that come your way, you can't feel really good about making a solid decision and moving forward with it. So you stay ruminating in this kind of what seems to be logical reasoning, but really it's not, because you're future thinking about things that may or may not be happening, trying to account or control for any possibility, when in reality, you have nothing to go by to be able to do that. And your ability to tap into your own intuition shuts down because that fear has taken over. Another thing that you may be experiencing is all kinds of nightmares that keep playing around in your head during the day that you can't seem to process and work out. This type of anxiety really keeps you stuck. It keeps you stuck going around in a circle, whether it's a general day-to-day angst and worry and rumination, or it's a heightened response that comes whenever you're triggered. Lastly, in the energetic systems, such as the chakras, you're looking at the crown chakra, the 7th chakra, where typically we access enlightenment, source energy, spiritual beliefs, any sort of higher inner knowing, intuition, or connection to source. This is where we'll tap into that. Higher meditation states, transcendence. Can't do that when you're in a state of fear-based anxiety. So when this chakra is out of balance, it truly does show that a person is anxious, okay? When 7th chakra is out of balance, person is anxious, person cannot integrate any of these higher energies. So they may be rattling off a lot of really advanced information or ideas and thoughts, but they cannot integrate it down here in earth and reality enough to share it with others. So instead of being able to share and bring some things and manifest some things into reality that could be really amazing, you sound a little bit more out there and crazy to folks because they can't really process or take in what you're saying because it's so scattered and anxious and all over the place. Lastly, this becomes a problem and shows up in the energetics and the astral body. This is where a lot of nightmares occur and people start to talk about seeing spirits, ghosts, and demons. And if the fear and anxiety rides high enough, there's a theory that this energy can mass collect and actually form a poltergeist, and it'll bounce around the house and create all kinds of panic and chaos and fear, and you need to actually at that point just dispel the energy. So you're really just working with energy, whether it's stuck inside the body or it's kind of started to release itself and bounce all over the place. Either way, same rules apply. You need to dispel it. And we dispel it by changing the frequencies of it. What do we need to do to transform this anxiety? Well, what works very, very well is a bioelectrical flower essence remedy named aspen. Aspen helps subdue the nervous system and stress responses and lift this frequency. Aspen is actually a tree, and this was originally used very heavily for this specific reason of trauma-based fear, anxiety, by a physician named Dr. Bach, who worked with other medical providers and was working in the 20s and 30s. They started using this form of plant medicine for psychological health, emotional well-being. They were seeing all kinds of patients flooding in the trauma units due to the war at the time, due to the Great Depression. This is when medical professionals really started working with the area of psychology, and they quickly figured out that there was, in this area anyway, this was England and Europe, that there were 38 main essences that they would extract and use that they found through their data and research worked with different personalities and different areas of emotional responses for folks, and they were getting really great results. So aspen is considered the second 19 of the Bach classification system, and all that means is these 19 reflect our emotional responses to traumatic events. Okay, so this is a fear-based anxiety due to an underlying trauma that has buried itself in the subconscious. So when you start feeling this and experiencing this on a day-to-day basis in ways that it's really becoming dysfunctional and keeping you stuck in life, it's the emotional energy rearing its ugly head from something that's in your subconscious that you're going to need to work out, because that frequency is obviously bouncing around in the body, wreaking havoc, and it's showing itself in the physical, mental, and energetic planes that we just discussed. The way to best understand this is looking at what's called a consciousness frequency scale. So there's people who have looked at and studied the frequency levels of the different emotions that occur within our consciousness. Okay, one is Dr. David Hawkins. You can look at his books, Power versus Force, or The Map of the Consciousness Explained, if you want to really dive into this. But to very much understand aspen, it works through fear. Okay, so the consciousness frequency scale of fear occurs at a level which was called 100. Right? What that means is anything under the critical point of 200 is a lower, stronger frequency that can pretty much keep a person stuck in those areas and becomes dysfunctional if they're operating in that frequency day to day. You operate in that frequency day to day when it's stuck in your nervous system, your cardiac system. Those guys carry all the electrical stuff. And when it's really stuck in the body, okay, at the subconscious mind. So when you're working with fear, what they found is the emotion that reflects that is anxiety. And the process or the behavior that you're going to pretty much demonstrate is withdrawal. And the point of view that you have consciously is frightening, and your higher consciousness point of view, which is a little bit more subconscious, it's really buried, is punitive. So if you think about this after what we just discussed, if you really think about this, when somebody is experiencing fear and their point of view is frightening, they're operating at a fear level. They are very, very afraid, and it's coming out as emotion of anxiety. And they're probably going to demonstrate a lot of withdrawal or isolation like we discussed because they've had to repress this from something traumatic. So the person does not have the skills to let this energy out because they didn't in the past. Something happened when it was buried and they weren't allowed to express this energy, defend themselves, speak about it, or do whatever was needed to let it out. And instead it was stifled and then buried in the subconscious. This creates a very typical trauma pattern in life, which is punitive or punishing. So the subconscious mind tends to think, when something triggers and we start to respond familiar to a trauma that we have buried, the subconscious mind goes, ooh, if I respond this way, or if I speak or act out or do or say or scream or yell or whatever I need to do or I think I need to do to handle this, if I do this, there's going to be a consequence and it's going to be bad because it was bad before. And so I become anxious instead. And I held everything inside, so I withdraw and isolate. That's the trauma pattern. Okay? And that's what you are not recognizing when you're feeling this anxiety. When you work with Aspen, it addresses this, and the opposite of fear on the consciousness frequency scale is courage, which brings you at a critical level of 200, meaning anything from 200 and above allows you to operate on a day-to-day basis. If you can maintain that frequency, you can maintain an overall healthy state and you won't have a negative impact on your mental, physical, and energetic self. Courage shows up as an emotion being affirmation with a processing or behavior of empowerment with a conscious point of view of feasible and higher consciousness or subconscious of permitting. So think about this. You start working with something like Aspen that helps change your frequency to one where you are now subconsciously, instead of looking at things as punishment, you're permitting yourself. You're permitting yourself to have a feasible viewpoint, to actually affirm that you can display courage, and this can be very empowering. So when you work with Aspen, expect an inner state of peace and security that allows you to have the confidence necessary to feel a level of safety, to exhibit fearlessness or courage, to disregard false dangers and remain open to new adventures. Aspen can help a person transform from being stuck in a lower frequency of fear to maintaining their emotional state at that critical point on the consciousness frequency scale of a level of 200 or above, starting with courage or fearlessness. And here's some examples of the potential transformation Aspen can have for you. When you start working with it, the fear-based anxiety quiets. The nervous system and the heart symptoms that you may see resolve. You can settle into inner peace and security. You can feel safe enough to be fearless, have a desire for adventure and new experiences, not be paralyzed or frozen, and disregard future anticipated dangers and difficulties. Aspen flower essence quiets and subdues the astral body so that the spiritual ego can gain greater strength and awareness of what is real on earth and remain in confidence with the self. When this happens, you can access and ground higher ideas and thoughts that you can now manifest in your reality and openly express this through your conscious mind and physical body. A person can work toward enlightenment. And when one has an enlightened spirit, they can exude strength, peace, and wisdom. When we are in balance with Aspen and able to access higher awareness, we can manifest possibility and transcend beyond our physical selves, but still remain connected to what is real here on earth. So this is where we get to create and explore new realms of what is possible for ourselves. That trauma stored in your body, that energy will either release itself with a changed frequency, or You will be able to remain courageous and calm enough to face off with it, let go, and replace those responses with new patterns, ones that actually serve you. And if you are so heightened and needing some additional help, this is where you can call upon your professionals in the areas of behavioral health and different forms of plant medicine, such as marijuana and psilocybin. And if you're going to be working with any of those, or you're going to be working with psychology and psychiatry, aspen is a wonderful plant essence to bring into and work with, because it will not interfere with any of the work you do. It'll only assist in allowing you to be capable to stay calm and courageous enough to face off with these things, learn how to cope, and again, retrain your body and reprogram your mind to go forward and start manifesting and having the things that you desire and not being stuck in this fear and anxiety day in and day out. Have a great day. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you think somebody will benefit, please absolutely share it. And next Plant Medicine Monday will be anxiety type number 2. Stay anxiety and stress free, y'all.